Enough. That's the message being sent from many around the world to big business and government, as people in almost 1,000 cities are taking their anger to the streets. Let's try and get our heads around exactly where this all began. The Occupy Wall Street movement started in New York, quickly spreading across the US to LA, Denver and Washington, then global to Asia, joining in with the demands for change there, and Europe as well. Hundreds of cities taking part in the protests. Let's have a closer look at what's happening in some of them now. We've got our correspondents now, Ivor Bennett in London, Daniel Bushell in Brussels, Irina Galushko in Madrid. Thank you all for coming on the programme. Let's start with Ivor. Obviously a high level of public discontent all around the world. What are people there in London saying to you?
The slogan of the protest here in London is "Pay it back." And they are, of course, referring to the trillions of dollars paid in bonuses to senior banking executives over the last decade or so, as now in a time when taxpayers' money is continued to be used to bail out the banks at this time of crisis. So that's what they're angry about. Now they've taken their protest to the centre of London in the financial district, the Stock Exchange, the Bank of England, and here outside St Paul's Cathedral. Now they're here because they're actually being hemmed in by a police cordon. We're having some trouble covering the event, actually, because even though we're press and accredited press, we're not actually being allowed through. And I understand from Twitter there are 3 other police cordons in place. They're being branded as kettles. That refers to the controversial police tactic, hemming in the protesters. Now, these other cordons are in place outside the Bank of England and the London Stock Exchange. According to Twitter, there's thousands there. Other news reports are saying there's about 500 protesters. Here on the steps of St Paul's Cathedral, there's around 500. They're sitting there camped out with rucksacks, tents, sleeping bags. They say they're not going to go away. They're going to stay for as long as it takes. They've got placards here campaigning for no cuts and things like that. But as I say, I can't get through at the moment to actually cover the event because the police are not letting us through. They're employing some quite strong-arm tactics as they try to dispel what is in large a peaceful protest, but it is actually adding fuel to the flames. Now, I'm joined now by author and journalist Afshin Rattansi to talk more about this. Now, Afshin, there's not much coverage from the media, and the media that is here is having some problems. Now, what's wrong with the coverage of this event in the British media? Is it getting enough?
London, of course, one of the epicentres of financial global capital. Demonstrations not just here, Tokyo, Seoul, Manila, all the way to Rome, Paris, London, of course, Wall Street. This demonstration very different for London, like the demonstrations of the late 1980s, because they are targeting capitalism at its heart, the city of London. Far more powerful, arguably, than the Houses of Parliament where we normally have demonstrations, because these are the people that pay the elected representatives of the people in this country.
We're just saying this event, though, is getting the coverage it deserves.
As you alluded to, Ivor, very dangerous tactics by the British police. They are not allowing people through. They're not allowing journalists through, so that we get minimised numbers being covered in the mainstream media across the country to limit the understanding by the British people of how there are people supporting the 99%, as they call them. Very dangerous tactics. Certainly no freedom of the press today in the City of London. Helicopters overhead, police kettling, trapping the protesters in, and not allowing protesters to grow, more protesters to arrive.
Clearly, also, there's a lot more protesters than originally was planned. And to begin with, the media in Britain was actually ridiculing this. Do you think the government now will start taking note of people's concerns? This is a lot more serious than they thought it would be, surely. I
think the British government, both parties, widely discredited. We mustn't forget that in Britain we don't have technically an elected government. No one voted for the government that is currently in power here. They go on regardless, bailing out bankers and so forth, supporting capitalism, just as the other major parties do. This movement will grow and grow, as it has done in the United States, and we'll be watching, won't we, as we see how politicians render themselves slowly more and more irrelevant.
Do you think they'll actually achieve anything here? What will they actually get out of this?
It's difficult to see how demonstrations in themselves are going to change things, because the nature of democracy is so destroyed in this country. We know from the Rupert Murdoch scandal, the way the British police were paid off by the media themselves. Their civic society in this country is now so corrupted, so destroyed, and so out of touch with the lives of ordinary people who are suffering because of the obsession, the religious obsession with cutting the debt rather than Keynesian economics. It's difficult to predict exactly what the future lies for these protests, but they're certainly going to grow.
And just quickly, this police tactic, is that going to possibly prompt more violence that we saw with the riots in the last couple of months?
Ironically, the Deputy Prime Minister predicted riots because of cuts before the general election. I think we're certainly going to see more and more civil unrest on the streets of London and beyond in this country.
Afshin Rattanji, thanks very much for speaking to RT. That's all we've got from London at the moment. We'll continue to try and cover this event. At the moment, the police aren't allowing us to, but we'll try and bring you more updates from not only London Stock Exchange, but also the Bank of England, where thousands of protesters are now being hemmed in by police.
Indeed, Ivor, as the authorities clamp down on you, many protesters and journalists being barred from entering this gathering. Let's go from the protest central in London now to the political heart of Europe, over to Daniel Bushell now in Brussels. Daniel, people around Europe have been blaming the EU for their economic troubles. Any sign of concern among the lawmakers where you are?
Well, protesters are now marching here to the central park of Brussels from the European Parliament building where they've been protesting. They want to create here an alternative parliament, what they call a people's parliament, not one that serves the financial elite. It comes on news that the latest banking outrage, one of Belgium's biggest banks, Dexia, has been bailed out by the government to the cost, an estimated cost to the taxpayer of €5,000 per person. And people here are furious that the CEO of that bank was promised a €600,000 bonus for last year, despite leading the bank to this crisis. Now, there's a huge police presence here. We're seeing them on horses, on bikes, in fact, and they've actually closed off several roads as well. The authorities are saying they've banned the meeting of this group here, of this parliament, this alternative parliament, on the grounds that there's no running water for them. Now, the protesters here are sceptical. They think that this is just an excuse to stop them meeting, because this is an international now protest. People here have come from all across Europe, as far as the Atlantic coast from Spain.
All right, RT's Daniel Bushell there from Brussels. As you were saying, Daniel, protesters, not just in London, but where you are also being stopped from trying to get into this whole gathering here. Let's cross over to Madrid, where Irina Galushko is. Madrid, Spain as a whole, Irina, has seen a very troublesome year with the whole Eurozone. How much momentum is there among the activists there? I think you're on a rooftop. You can look down and see. Tell us, what's the scene?
Well, I have to say that for the Spanish residents, the protests are actually things as usual. They have been essentially protesting since May 15th of this year. In fact, for several months, protesters were camped down here in the main square of the Spanish capital, Puerta del Sol. They have disbanded that camp, but for months they were out here. They were demanding that the government do something other than implement severe austerity measures, because those have left people without jobs, without homes, without any opportunity for essentially a normal life. People have been evicted from their homes because thousands literally have been losing the chance to pay rent, the chance to pay their mortgage loans. Spain has one of the highest unemployment rates in the Eurozone. In fact, it is the highest at 21%. It has an immense unemployment rate for the youth citizens. It's over 45%. So, of course, that means that the most energetic part of the population, the young and educated people, are left without jobs. And what does that mean? That means that they're going out on the streets and they're making their voices heard. They're just starting to get together from different places, from different neighborhoods in Madrid. In fact, it's not just the Spanish capital that's going to participate in these marches. It's basically several dozens of towns and cities across the entire country. But here in Madrid, people are meeting in their various neighborhoods because they have special quarters set up all over the place, and they're going to walk down to the center, to Puerta del Sol. It's more or less calm right now. There's still some people out there, of course, but there's going to be thousands, literally thousands, as there were months ago, who are going to come here, and they're going to voice their opinion of what the government is doing, or rather not doing, loud and clear. So we're still ahead for a very busy and very interesting day in Madrid. Of course, we'll bring you more as we get from the Spanish capital.
Yeah, certainly, our RT coverage is going all day long here for this global movement. RT's Irina Galushko in Madrid, Daniel Bushell in Brussels, Ivor Bennett in London. Thank you.